Assalamu alaikum. Today I will continue my previous class. Today I am going to discuss about the derived lipid. The very important derived lipid is the fatty acid. The carboxylic acid with aliphatic hydrocarbon chain is known as fatty acid. So we can classify the fatty acid in different manner. One is the based on total number of the carbon. On the basis of total number of carbon, fatty acid can be classified into two groups, that is long chain fatty acid and short chain fatty acid. When the carbon number is greater than 10 in aliphatic hydrocarbon chain, it is known as long chain fatty acid, and when the carbon number is less than 10 in the aliphatic chain hydrocarbon chain is known as short chain fatty acid. On the basis of saturation of carbon, it is classified as unsaturated fatty acid and saturated fatty acid. In saturated fatty acid, there will be no double bond within the hydrocarbon chain, but unsaturated fatty acid contain one or more double bond in their hydrocarbon chain. On the basis of number of double bond, unsaturated fatty acid can be classified into two groups. One is monounsaturated fatty acid, monounsaturated, that means this kind of unsaturated fatty acid contain one double bond, and polyunsaturated fatty acid that contain two or more double bonds in their hydrocarbon chain. Here I am showing some examples of the unsaturated fatty acid. Number one is monounsaturated fatty acid. For example, oleic acid, palmitoic acid are known as monounsaturated fatty acid. They contain one double bond in their hydrocarbon chain, and their dietary sources are olive oil, canola oil. And polyunsaturated fatty acid contain one or more double bond in their hydrocarbon chain. For example, essential fatty acid, that is linoleic, linolenic and arachidonic acid, and they usually found in vegetable oil, fish oil, etc. And another one is unsaturated fatty acid. This kind of fatty acid contain no double bond in their hydrocarbon chain, and for example, palmitic acid, stearic acid are saturated fatty acid, and they usually found in animal fat, coconut oil and palm oil. There is another classification of fatty acid known as nutritional classification. On the basis of nutritional classification, we can classify fatty acid into two groups, essential and non-essential fatty acid. Essential fatty acid are those which cannot be synthesized inside our body, so they must be supplied through diet. That means that doesn't mean that essential fatty acid is very much essential as our body. All the fatty acids are very much essential because they cannot synthesize inside our body, they are known as essential fatty acid. For example, essential fatty acid are three in number actually: linoleic, linolenic and arachidonic acid. And non-essential fatty acid are those that can be synthesized inside our body, so it is not necessary to be supplied with diet. For example, palmitic acid, stearic acid, oleic acid are non-essential fatty acid. So, as I have said before, why essential fatty acid are said so? Because they do not produce inside our body, so but they are required for our body, so must be supplied with diet. Here I am showing some common sources of essential fatty acid: the fish oil, egg yolk. These substances are contain essential fatty acid. There are some biological importances of essential fatty acid, such as act as precursor of eicosanoids, act as component of biological membrane, reduces plasma cholesterol, help in gonadal function, reproduction and growth, support oxidative phosphorylation in respiratory chain of mitochondria, helps in vision. They are essential for skin integrity, important in preventing and treating fatty as liver. And there are some properties of fatty acid. These are water solubility, melting point, isomerism, soap formation, star formation, oxidation, hydrogenation and halogenation. On the basis of geometric isomerism, fatty acid can be classified two types, that is cis fatty acid and trans fatty acid. That means if the carboxylic group present the same side of the double bond. This type of fatty acid are known as cis fatty acid, and if the carboxylic group present on both sides of the carbon-carbon double bond, this kind of fatty acid are known as trans fatty acid. Here I am showing the example of cis and trans fatty acid of the oleic acid, and this cis trans geometric isomerism is very important from our membrane fluidity. Our saturated and unsaturated fatty acid are very important to maintain our membrane fluidity. That means, if it is the saturated fatty acid, they are showing, usually they show a straight conformation, and there will be the more saturated fatty acid will be less fluidity of the প্লাজমা মেমব্রেন, এবং যত বেশি হচ্ছে ডাবল বন্ড থাকবে, কার্বন কার্বন ডাবল বন্ড থাকবে একটা ফ্যাটি অ্যাসিডের মধ্যে, এবং যত বেশি আনস্যাচুরেটেড ফ্যাটি অ্যাসিড প্রেজেন্ট থাকবে বায়োলজিক্যাল মেমব্রেনে, ওই বায়োলজিক্যাল মেমব্রেন তত বেশি ফ্লুইডিটি মেনটেন করবে। নাম্বারিং অ্যান্ড ডিজাইনিং অফ এ কার্বন ইন ফ্যাটি অ্যাসিড। সো there are two numbering system, that is omega numbering system and delta numbering system. So in case of delta numbering system, usually carboxylic group carbon numbered as 1, then the subsequent carbons are numbered as 2, 3, 4, 5. On the other hand, the carbon present just opposite to the carboxylic group on the hydrocarbon chain, the last carbon as usual is known as omega carbon in case of omega numbering system. So omega 6 fatty acid is the fatty acid where the carbon carbon double bond is present at 6 number carbon from the omega carbon, and omega 3 fatty acid are the fatty acid where the carbon carbon double bond usually present from the 3 carbon from number 3 carbon from omega carbon, and omega 6 as well I have said before. And ketone bodies, there are important 3 ketone bodies in our body, they are also usually known as fats. These are beta hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate and acetone, and acetone usually in gaseous form. And their ketone bodies are very important because alternative fuel for the extrahepatic tissue, they act as alternative fuel for the extrahepatic tissue. And amphipathic lipid, amphipathic means the lipid may behave as hydrophilic, the lipid which behave as both hydrophilic and hydrophobic. That means sometimes they partially soluble in water, also partially soluble in fat solvent. This kind of lipid are known as amphipathic lipid. So in case of amphipathic lipid, there is a polar head that is hydrophilic in nature and the non-polar tail that is hydrophobic in nature. Amphipathic lipid usually present in the cell membrane. And icosanoids, how icosanoids are synthesized inside our body. Icosanoids usually the chemical substance or chemical substance that act as sometimes they are act as hormone, or sometimes they are act as chemical mediators for important for various kind of functions inside our body. So how they synthesize? They usually synthesized from the lipid, from membrane phospholipid. From membrane phospholipid we get arachidonic acid, which is an essential fatty acid, and from the arachidonic acid this icosanoids such as prostaglandin and hydroxytryptamine is synthesized by 2 pathways. One is lipoxygenase pathway and the other one is cyclooxygenase pathway. In cyclooxygenase pathway prostaglandin synthesized, and from prostaglandin prostacyclin, prostaglandin and thromboxane A2 usually synthesized, and from hydroxytryptamine leukotrienes and lipoxin usually synthesized. So as I have said before, these chemical mediators, that means icosanoids, also they are known as paracrine hormones. These chemical mediators usually do different important functions or perform important functions in our body, and these are, suppose thromboxane A2 is responsible for vasoconstriction and increased platelet aggregation. Prostaglandins are responsible for vasodilation and potentiate edema. Prostacyclin are responsible for vasodilation, decreased platelet aggregation. Lipoxins are responsible for vasodilation, that is decreased neutrophilic chemotaxis and increased monocyte adhesion. And leukotrienes usually responsible for vasoconstriction and bronchospasm, such as increased vascular permeability. Another derived lipid and very important lipid is the steroids. Compound that have steroid nucleus, and steroid nucleus is the composed of 17 carbons in 4 fused carbocyclic rings, one oxygen atom attached with the carbon 3 nucleus, and the steroid nucleus is known as cyclopentanoparahydrophenanthrin nucleus. Here I have already shown the steroid nucleus. And sterols are the compound also contain at steroid nucleus, but at carbon 3 of the nucleus hydroxyl group is attached. So, cholesterol is the most common sterol. Here I am showing you the structure of cholesterol, and it is a 27 carbon cyclic structure. And cholesterol, we get cholesterol from diets such as egg, meat, milk, especially the red meat and the prawn are responsible for the cholesterol, and cholesterol can also synthesize inside our body. So, there are also endogenous sources of cholesterol, and function of cholesterol are they are the membrane component, precursor for the steroid hormone, bile acid, vitamin D, etc., and importance responsible for certain atherosclerotic disorders. So, that is all for today. Thank you.